Okay, I'm going to start, and hopefully anyone who comes on now will mute themselves if I don't. So welcome to this demo of water reflections. And you all have gotten, or should have gotten at the bottom of the email for what we were going to be doing today, there should be the photo. The photo that you got sent was one that I had already kind of cropped in my photo thing but I thought it's interesting for you to see that this is really how it began. You can all see that there's a lot more of the sky, which is really not that interesting in order to focus down in here. So I'm going to cut it down and decided to make this more or less into a square. Get a little more of this out to start my demo. Oh, anybody I need to mute? Okay. So I'm pretty much starting with the same, hold on, I think I may have to mute someone. Hold on. Sorry about that. I think everyone's here, so. All righty. Okay, so I start with the red oxide transparent for my drawing, which is a Cobra, not a Holbein duo on the water miscibles. And I have to turn this just a little bit so I can actually see. And I'm squinting down to get my first design. And notice that I want these, and it'll be more like that in your photograph. It's kind of nice to have something holding it up here, just a nice little dark. That'll kind of keep it to the top. I am using some of the medium that I've been using of late. I ordered another one. I'll be curious to see if I like it any better. Oh, I just realized I don't have any water. Okay. All righty. Whoops. Like the Marx Brothers here. And very simply, I want to get down to my story. Now, the big question is, even this, I think I want to have a little more reflection and maybe pull the boat up just a bit. I find that it's much more interesting what's going on below the boat than what's going on above the boat. And these are the kinds of decisions you should be making regardless of whether or not you're working from a photograph or you're working directly on location. And I am not great at boats. Kathy can tell you that as a boat person. She's always correcting my boats. But it is just basically going to be a shape. And the thing I want to make sure of is how, if this is the middle line right about here, I don't want my end of my boat to end up in the middle. I always like it to go a little bit over, just for better design. Now, I've been watching, as I say, I've been telling you guys a lot of the streamlined videos just to see how other people do things. Very interesting. Oh, somebody just came on. Can you mute yourself? Okay. So I try not to think, oh my God, it's a boat, and I don't know anything about boats, which is absolutely true. I try to look pretty carefully just at what kind of a shape it's going to make. Bring that up a little bit higher. And I don't want to get obsessed about the drawing on this because, again, I like to do a lot of putting down a shape in paint, cover, and then carving back on it if necessary. And I can see that there's that nice reflection, which is the whole point of what we're doing here. So I draw right through. I don't think separately. I'm not going to say put in all the water and then put in the reflection. This is all part of the same basic idea. Now I think as I look at this, I realize the back of the boat has to be much longer. And again, if this is the part of the boat in the back that's in shadow and turned away, that shadow goes right into the water. And somewhere in here is where it divides between what's the water and what's not the, and what's the actual boat. I think I just have to mute someone again. Give me 1 second. If you come on and you don't know how to mute yourself, I'll do it. Okay. All righty, so that's really enough of my start. I don't know if I'm going to put any of the that kind of low tide looking silt or whatever there. I'm not sure that's all that important or that interesting. And again, I've moved this boat up so that I have more going on below it. And now I'm just going to start filling in my color fields. Now, it doesn't really matter what color I make that sky right now. I can change it if I want to. It's so little in terms of how much there really is of the sky. I'm not all that concerned, but it's just nice to, I like to paint the whole at all times. I don't like to start, you know, and make one area important before I have everything kind of cleared on here. So right now I am just mixing. Now let's get back to what I say every week about mixing color. And that is that in order to create a neutral, something that is not, that doesn't have a lot of either what you would call chroma and I just call intensity, then what I will do is put a combination that has all of the 3 primary colors. So what I have just done now is I've taken some sap green, which has both blue and yellow in it, and I've taken a little bit of the red oxide transparent, which has both red and yellow in it, and I get a nice kind of neutral dark here. And I don't know how dark in the end I want it to be. I just want to kind of get it in there. And squinting down, I see that the dark really runs quite a bit down towards into the water a bit. So I'm going to let that happen. Remember that these first layers are just getting some paint down. My rag here. I like to use rags whenever I can rather than paper towel. Now from this little puddle here of my dark and that, I'm pulling in some of my Verditer blue, which is a nice kind of warmish blue, and picking up a little bit of the dark that I've already had. So I kind of like to work with this idea that I put down a little puddle of paint of dark, and from that puddle of paint, I can pull my blue so that it has some influence of that dark, but also becomes a little more into the blue. And now I'm starting kind of a new puddle here. And that puddle has a little bit of the original one. You can see me pulling there, I hope. And then, but then also I put in some of my lavender to kind of lighten this a little bit. And again, not so worried about everything being perfect yet, because the details come not immediately. In the first place, you're just trying to carve down your basic shapes. I'm using that medium to get a lot of this down. And all the nuances that eventually I'll want to put in the water, they don't happen yet. They happen later. And I'm actually going to put a little bit of water into my paint too, in order to get it moving a little bit more easily and covering the area a little bit more. I don't like to paint with a lot of the water, but sometimes for that first layer, it can be very helpful to get that going down. I always say that this part of the painting always looks like a kindergartner did it. All right, it gives us the idea that this is basically going to have a lot more blue, which we'll play with in time. And now, I think I'll stay with the big brush still, just washing it off. Now, I know that the boat is white, but I don't want it to be too, if you put in something that's too white, too stark, it doesn't quite, it's a little too much for the painting. It's a little too white, and then there's really nowhere to go from there. So I'm putting a little bit of yellow ochre in my white to kind of make it just not quite so white. And a teeny bit of my horizon blue, which I choose because then I don't get a super green, because again, horizon blue, it does have yellow in it, but I don't want it to be too green. See, I have a nice kind of gray going here now. A very warm, light gray, but nevertheless, it's not super white. Now, it's a slightly cooler as it hits the water, the reflection of it, okay? It's not quite as yellowy white as the top is. So I put a little bit of the blue and a little bit of my jaune brillant just to cool it down ever so slightly as the reflection in the water. Back up to the top one, warm it up again. And there's a little bit of shadow here. It's not quite, you can see that on your, you can all look at your reference. So how do I get that little bit of shadowing without it being too shadowed? What I've decided is to put a little bit of the yellow ochre and a little bit of my lilac. Again, it gives you nice grays without being too different, too dark. You want your values always, you can't have a shadow on a white, essentially on a white boat or any kind of white object, and then have it be a super dark shadow. Your shadows in value always have to relate to whatever it is that your original. So in other words, something that's white on the, if you think about a value scale of going from 10 to 1, 10 being the darkest, almost black, and 1 being white, you can't go from 10 to 1 and keep your object. If you have something that's very light, your value jumps have to be between maybe 1 or 2 and maybe 4. If it's very dark, your value jumps can only be maybe between a dark 10 to maybe an 8 or a 7. So I'm respecting that. Now, even here, all right, perfect example. We do have, it's fairly dark back there and fairly cool. So, but it can't be too dark. If it's too dark, again, it's not going to read as the back of this boat. It can be a little darker than that. Well, maybe it can be that dark. Okay. Now I'm going to go to a smaller brush and brush is getting a little too weathered, I think. I have absolutely no idea what those things in the back of the boat are, but that's okay. They're just shapes, but they're necessary for to put them in for whatever they are. They don't have to actually be anything in particular. They're going to give us some more of the reflection down below. And I kind of like to hint at these kinds of windows on the boat rather than, you know, make them too outlined. When you outline things a little too much, they sort of stop the movement, and they become almost, it's like if you put too much around a window, it's the same thing. It becomes a little too eye-catching, and you don't want that. And then we've got figure that out. Okay. Now I'm gonna go a little round this boat because it's not quite the shape, but rather than continuously go with the shape, we want to carve around it a little bit. And let's get that even a little bit higher. The fun thing is when you get to all those little doohickeys off of it, that's when it really starts to be fun, but we're not there yet. Okay, I'm going to bring the top back up a little bit up here. I don't want quite so much of the far shore looking like mountains. And now, but I'm going to get a little, not really detail so much in the far mountain, but a little bit of interest. So it's not quite as dark and just, it's not, I don't want it to just be a brown. I want it to give the feeling like a Maine coast where there are those trees back. Bring it up a little higher. And I've put in a lot of, some of it's warm. I put a little coral even for some of it to play off of some of the darker green that's in it. And I think this is, some of it should go kind of off the canvas, so it's not quite so even up here. And that little, there's a little white, maybe boat back here, not quite sure, just enough so it says that you're seeing a little bit of the opposite shore, but not so much that it takes away from what our center of interest will be. Now I'm going to clean my palette because it's getting much paint on it that I don't want to influence the next layers, because I want to start getting into some of that water. Let it be a lot more interesting. Okay, so I like, let's get some nice mixture of my blues. I'm putting a little bit of the horizon blue, a little bit of the verditer blue as it comes down, so that, because I do want it to not be the same throughout. When you make it the same, it loses the depth that you want to give it, and it becomes too flat looking. So as I come down towards the boat, I want to change that blue hue a little bit, but I'm not sure how much I want to change the value too much yet. And I want to go back and forth with what we have for the boat in terms of giving that a little bit of interest as well. So I want to go to slightly lighter and a little more intense colors in here, just to pop it a little bit. Gives it a nice feeling of sunlight when you get some nice intense color going on those, whatever they are. I'm not actually sure what they are. And again, doesn't really matter. One of the things about working from a photograph is that if you don't know what it is in the photograph, don't try to figure out what it is on your painting. Just let it be the shape that you see. And don't obsess about what it could possibly be, because it doesn't really matter. Now I do a lot of, if I put a puddle of paint down, let me show you this a little closer, I hope. If I put this puddle of paint down over here, And that's got some red, cadmium red in it, a little blue, something that will be darker, not as dark as it can go. And I've got my blue here for the water. I pull often from one to another in order to give it the color harmony, so that when I go to the back of this boat, for instance, I might have a little bit of the darker that I'm adding to it, and then putting in some blue for that back of the boat. And in this way, I can keep things relating to each other instead of colors sort of all sitting separately. You want to have that feeling of harmony where your colors work with each other and don't necessarily all stand out continuously in a separate way. Now again, using that back behind it to carve it. Let me get this nice little light right here. And those are very important. They give you that sense of the light that is hitting the boat. And I'm carving down here as well. And I think I'm going to make the water a little bit lighter, but I want the intensity of it. So I'm not adding anything to it other than white in order to keep the purity of this color happening here. We'll soften that edge just a bit. Okay, that's starting to actually look a little bit like a boat. And you should all know I'm terrible at boats, so I am constantly just trying to make this not about a boat, but about a shape. I am not a marine painter. Nobody would ever hire me to do their boat. But that doesn't mean I can't have fun doing a boat. Okay, now I'm going to start coming in on some of the fun things going on with this boat. This is when it's fun to have a palette knife for some of these. Straight little line right there. Just the teeniest bit. And then above it, it's light. There. We have this nice, I don't know why, I guess it's sort of yellow down here. Make sure my brush is clean. I love this little yellow that's happening at the bottom of the boat here. And this little bit of dark here. Now, part of what happens with the boat reflections is that they're a little shaky, okay? So you don't want them to be as solid as the boat above. You want them to have that little bit of movement from the water. And so what I'm going to do is put them in, but then come back in with some of the water against it to kind of give it that feeling. Sometimes I think with reflections, if all you do is what I'm doing now, it doesn't quite read as the reflection that you want. So you want to be able to move the water both directions, not just by putting in the boat reflection, but then by pulling the water back, which you shall see in a minute. I remember the first time I saw, it was a detail and it was on some magazine, it was years ago, of reflections in water, and I was just blown away, and I thought, wow. And I stared at that till I started learning what they had done. And of course, it's just always shapes. That's what it always comes down to, are just shapes. Like that. I have that little So these are the details that start making it more reflective as well. But let's make the one on the bottom a little bit shakier and a little bit longer. And then just for the hell of it, even though it's not in the picture, let's bring it down a little bit into there. Okay, and we'll go back to our reflections here. And now I'm going to come in with some of the water as well. Now that's a little bit lighter than I want it, so let's get it a touch darker. I'm going to stand back in a minute, but I need to just see what's going on here. A little darker, I think. Okay, maybe it's a little dark. We'll just keep saying here. It's much, much darker. These guys are so much darker in the water. I don't know if I want them to be that much darker, but put a little bit of the, I'm putting a little bit of the cadmium orange and a little bit of the cadmium yellow here. Just, and then I'm going to step back for a minute, see how things are going. That's very hard to see when you're right on top of it. Okay, this might be a little bit too light, but I'm going to leave it for now and pull it. I know. And I guess I do need my glasses. That's probably going to get eliminated. I think there was one too many there. Oops. It's the wrong color. Let's get some. So basically, I'm just kind of looking at these shapes. I'm not trying to copy them exactly. I wouldn't be able to even if I tried, but I am trying to give that feeling of movement. And this is a fairly still water, but it still has some movement to it. If I just kind of pull from there out a little, it will also give some of that movement to it. It's a little darker. And I've exaggerated that, and I can always come back in over it. Notice this is the area of interest. So this is where I'm putting the most amount of, obviously, detail and concentration, because I'm held by other things. I mean, I can kind of step back and see it and know that everything else is holding it. In other words, I'm not just working on one thing the whole time, but definitely putting my focus and my concentration there because I've already figured out, you know, where else things will go. Where's that? Great. Oh, I love this dagger brush here. Can you see it? Oh, there. The dagger brush has a really nice point on it. And it's nice for getting some of these littler lines going. I'm not going to do those until the very, very end. It's kind of like when you put the last little touches on a portrait when you get the nice little reflect, you know, little highlights in the eyes or whatever. That's the fun part when we get there. Now that's getting a little messy in there, so I want to come back in and kind of clean it up a little. I think I'll do it with a smaller brush. The thing I love about painting in oils is how it's such a back and forth. You know, you do something, and instead of going, oh my God, I just made a huge mistake, you just go back and paint over it, and you always learn a little something from doing that. I mean, I think taking chances in painting is so important. And as I always say to my students, if I can get up in front of all you people and do a demo, you can have the courage to screw up a painting or not screw up a painting. Yeah. Okay, I need to simplify that. But see how even this is now? Like, I don't like that. It's too even. So I want to bring some things down from here. Just to break up that perfect little rectangle that it became. And again, this is why you paint rather than photograph, because, or I guess people can manipulate photographs too, but you know, you don't want to just accept what you see. You want to be able to make it work on your painting. Okay. Now I want to get some, I'm going to leave that for a minute. And I want to get some of this beautiful dark that starts here at the bottom. I'm going to have to move my little bit. Hopefully you can all still see it. And I'm putting, in this case, I'm using some of my ultramarine blue. And I need some more of my medium to let it go on. Because that gives you a little bit of the character of the water as well. Yeah, there we go, that's nice. little too intense. So to knock it down, but keep its value, okay? Keep its darkness, but make it not quite as intense as almost the pure ultramarine was. I put in some of the, in this case, the red oxide transparent. Again, if I had just put in alizarin, it might be too purple. And I didn't want it to be too purple. Because of the yellow that exists in the red oxide transparent, then when I add that, again, I go back to having all three primaries. And I'm going to squeeze out a little more of my dagger blue. I hope you've all gotten by now my regular supply list. Although having said that, I have to say one of the things I've been watching are people who work with a very limited palette and then mix their own colors. And for some people, I think that works really well because they're confused by too many colors. I'm not confused by too many colors. I think partly because of being coming at it in pastel, I really like having a lot of color. But I've been playing with it, and I highly recommend that you get out of comfort zones and try things like that because it's really eye-opening. And I did get colors that I don't have when I did that, which was kind of a fun thing as well. So let's get some of this down. I hope you can see why I moved the boat up so that we would have much more of the reflection down here than we had. I probably could have moved it up even a little more. I'm not going to do that now. But I am going to do a little more on the top before I'm done. And what's our time? Oh, I still have 15 more minutes. And in some cases, I'm almost using pure verditer blue to give it that feeling. Now I have to step back because I'm not only not seeing it, I'm seeing it on an angle. Okay, this is now too dark, I realize, or too, yeah, a little too defined and a little too dark, which when I'm too close to it, it's hard for me to see. So I want to gradate that a little bit more as it comes up, but still give it the feeling of that movement in the water. Now I'm not changing the value very much, but I'm making that a lot cooler. Breaking up some of the reflections again. And I think I'm going to pull it up a little bit again. I think that coral back there was causing a little too much attention where I didn't want it to be. Try something fun with the sky. If you see that my color has a lot more warmth in it which is giving me a much more of a sense of not, you know, a bright blue sky on a sunny day around, you know, noon or something. I think it looks a little more like it could be a late afternoon sky. So I'm going to make it much warmer as a sky. And bring some of it down, but not entirely. And if I do that, let's get a little light on the top here. This is what they, I guess, would call artistic license, but I think it needs it. Okay. And just a hint of the far shore. That's a little too much of a hint. Let's see. Yeah, I know this is a lot, but I'm really kind of liking it. I don't think I want to change it too much. It's certainly more than what you might see. So let's do a couple of things. Get my glasses back on here. I don't like that up there, so let's change this. These are just little things happening on top here of the boat. I will not touch the bottom. And I'm going to clean this for our last little doohickeys. The thing about a painting is know when to stop. It doesn't mean it's perfect, but you need to you need to not overdo it until you've at least sat with it for a while. So whether or not this is completely finished, it is where I'm going to take it for now. Okay, this is where having too much coffee can hurt you. There we go. Let's get another one of these down here. And you don't actually want it to, the whole thing to show. If the whole thing shows, then it doesn't really do the way the light actually will hit something like that. Okay, but now I take my fun little, that brush I like so much, my dagger brush, a little bit of that's a little too thick. I will go back in on it so it's not quite so thick. Try to do the other one a little less. And let's pull back a little on this. Okay. And one thing you can do also, it's just kind of it's not really a trick. I mean, it is what happens, but is you can just kind of pull a few, let's get it a little lighter, little water things kind of over to make it also look more. Okay. All righty, I'm going to show it to you up front. You will all get a photo of this as well. Without getting paint all over. Okay, that's not so good, but hopefully here you go. You can sort of see it a little better. It fell into my paint, so be a little careful here. Back on for now. Wipe my hand, and then I'll unmute you and talk to you, and just give me 1 second to wipe my hands. Okay. Whew. Okay, let's see.
We're making.
Okay, all right now it's a cacophony.
Absolutely.
I'm going to let me exit the full screen here, because I think when I do that, when I do that, there should be a way of seeing.
Okay, and a phone number.
Let's see.
Up at the top, it's
I could see when you raise your hands.
And where are you located locally?
Huh.
Okay, so it will be outside today or tomorrow. We have a bin outside, alphabetical. It'll be under a G.
Ah, there we go. Okay, I'm going to mute you all again so that I'm hearing many things. But if you have a question,
How many?
you can raise your hand. How do I do this?
Okay. 2 women.
Ah.
Okay. You can put so a donation.
Okay, now when you raise your hand, there's a way to do it on the actual, because I don't see all of you. So if you raise your hand, a little hand comes up on the side and I can see you. And so I'm not seeing any raised hands at the moment, but I'm going to give you a chance. Is Catherine, are you raising your hand? Catherine Lane? Wait a minute. I'm so bad at this stuff. Okay, wait a minute.
Can you hear me?
Catherine, is that Catherine?
Yes.
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 Okay.
Hi.
Yes, I can.
Well, I want to thank you. This is my first demo that I've attended from you, and we had such a fun time when you came to Palm Beach Palm Beach.
Yeah, where I stayed.
And I really loved it. Thank you so much.
Oh,
I had a couple of questions, which was you're talking about a new medium. What medium is this?
So I have been using a little bit of I use the water miscible oils, so I can't.
Yes, that's right. So it's different
like
from
that.
what we're,
Yeah, now I know that Gamblin makes fabulous.
Yes.
Traditional oils, people say Gamblin is just the way to go. But I can't use it. I did write them and they said, no, it won't work with water miscible.
Okay,
So I've been using, this is a Winsor Newton.
Right.
But I've ordered another one. I think Daniel Smith is now making them. There's a lot of these water miscible oils being made now. And so there's a lot of companies are starting to make things to go with it. And they make a linseed oil and they make the water medium.
Okay.
The medium. And I've been using the medium and kind of checking it out. The other thing is, because there had been a question that someone emailed me, and it's about washing brushes. If you use the water miscible, I only have water that I rinse with when I'm painting. But when I wash my brushes, what I've been doing is I start with a little Dawn, washing for the dishwashing liquid, which is really gets grease out really well. So I like to start my brushes that way. And then I use the Masters cleaner. They come in little tubs. You can find the Masters brush cleaner, which a lot of people use. Some people also use, what is it, the wood, some kind of wood soap. I don't know, but I use the Masters. But I like it to stretch it, which is why I first used the Dawn.
Yes. Yes.
Sure. Anybody
Right.
else? Any other? I'm not seeing little hand. I can't see you all, so check where there's a place where you can raise your hand if you have a question, and then it comes up on the side here as a little hand if you do. Otherwise, I'll unmute you again in
Aline,
a moment.
Aline, if people would click on participants at the bottom
Yes.
and then scroll down all the names at the very bottom of the list, there's a little sign that says raise hand. So if I click it, I'm Judy Reeve. So
Yeah.
if you see on my thing, it has a little hand up there.
Okay, I saw that. Yeah.
So if you just click on, well, the other way to do it is up at the top right-hand corner, you can click, well, I guess that doesn't matter, gallery view or speaker view.
I think because it's, oh, there it is. Okay.
Yeah, it's participants. If you click,
Yes.
So
if you
I
click the participants,
I think you just unmuted me. I had my hand raised.
I
It's
see.
Donna.
Right. And
Okay, I have a few questions. All right.
Sure.
First question.
Yes.
The reference, the contrast looked much stronger than what you do. Do you generally lessen the contrast because you think the camera accentuates the contrast?
Well, I'm not sure if I think that I guess the contrast, I think the bottom underneath the boat was a lot more of a deep blue, and I chose to lighten it a little bit.
But even the background,
Okay, so that's a good question, because that goes to something I talked about last week, and that is the mountains in the back, the trees, and why I don't make them as dark as they appear in the photograph. And the reason for that has a lot to do with when you're with what I know from being outside and painting.
I remember now, yes.
Yeah, that if you're looking at the boat, and you can even do it a little bit in the photograph, but really if you're on location, you look at something, that's your center of interest. Your peripheral vision might see the mountains in the distance or the trees in the distance, but they will not be as dark, because if you make them too dark, they become more important than the boat. And in truth, we're looking at the boat. So
I get it.
Why
Yeah.
I lessen that.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Second question.
Yes.
With your particular paints, you have a lavender and a lilac, but I looked all over at different oil paints, and they don't really have.
They may not call it that, but you can also mix it really easily.
Yeah. What
Lavender, you can just do, if you have rose madder and King's blue or even ultramarine blue, and you mix that and then add white, you'll get a beautiful lavender. And
Okay.
for lilac, you just have more red and less blue, and you get, I mean, I know because I was mixing these things this week just for the fun of it, but these do come in a tube, so I get it.
Okay, another question, dagger brush.
I get the rosemary brushes. I see that I have a lot of questions, so I'll get quickly to these all. It's just a long, thin, it's called a dagger brush. It looks kind of like a long, thin dagger. It has a lot of give in it, and it comes to a really nice point. And that's why I like it for some of the, skinnier lines and things like that.
Just for a thin line or like a lot of thin lines?
You could, well, whichever, but it's the dagger brush is good for it. I would say play with it, see what it can do for you.
One more quickie. I notice how you hold your brush.
Yeah.
And if I'm painting too long, I get a lot of cramps in my hand.
Yeah.
Did you purposely change your style of holding the brush, or it's just natural?
It's pretty natural. I usually do overhand for some of it, and then towards the back of the brush. I just don't want to be, you don't want to hold it like a pencil and hold it really close, because then you don't get the full feeling of what a brush should kind of dance for you a little bit, and that gives you much better brush strokes and stuff.
Okay, thank you. And I think you were going for Murphy's oil when you were talking about a cleaner.
Yes.
Okay, that's all. Thank you very much. Loved it.
No, bye, Donna. Kenneth, I'm unmuting you. Did you have a question? Kenneth? Didn't I unmute you? All right, I don't know. Judith, did you still have a question, or you were just telling everybody? Am I unmuting people? Wait a minute. Maybe I'm not unmuting them. Kenneth is unmuted. All right, oh, Tina, okay.
Hi, Aline. Great job. Good to see you. Really enjoyed it. As I'm sitting there watching you, I'm thinking that little pot of water to the right must be massive because you keep rinsing off in it. The miscible oils just come off so easily when you're rinsing your brushes out on the right side of your palette box.
Oh, actually, I don't rinse off as much as sometimes I really only I usually wipe it off really well. I very rarely put that much water on it. But I was using a big brush with a lot of paint and I would rinse it off. No, it's just that, I just use the ones that people use, and there's not much water in it. It doesn't affect the paint very much just to rinse it off. And I mean, it's like what the same thing turpentine will do for you, but without the smell and the toxicity.
Second question is, I noticed you've got all this beautiful paint out. Since it's water miscible, can you put that in a cover, like a paint palette cover thing to keep it, or does that paint dry up after each?
Okay, so this particular palette has this top for it, and I just close it up. And actually, since I'm home painting, I've been putting it in my refrigerator, and they stay quite well. Most of the paint out there has been on there for a few days because I've been using a glass palette when I'm just painting for myself. It's just too big for you to see it, so that's why I use this one when I'm doing the demos. And I barely had to put any more paint out. Most of the paint had been there for a few days. So this is the Miele, I think it's called Miele. Yeah, Miele, and they're nice. It's a little small. I mean, I just found an old like cheapo frame, one of those metal frames that has glass and usually some stupid picture in it that you take out. And I've been using the glass on that when I'm painting for myself. I really love the way the paint is on glass, but unfortunately, you wouldn't be able to see the palette. So,
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Kenneth, do you still have a question? I think I unmuted you. Kenneth's iPad? No? Okay. Are you unmute? I don't know why it's not. Okay, you don't have a question. Okay, anyone else? I'm not seeing any other hands. Okay, I'm gonna unmute you just for 1 sec to make sure nobody had a question, and then I think we're gonna end our session. And so, okay, you should all be unmuted. Does anyone have a question?
What was the name of that palette?
The Miele, it's spelled M-I-J-E-L-L-O. M-I-J-E-L-L-O. You can get them at, online at Jerry's or even at sometimes even Michael's. So, any other questions?
Yes, your rosemary dagger, what number was it?
Oh, let me go
Wrong
see.
one? Oh, sorry.
If I can still see the number, sometimes they run out. Oh, no, I can. Huh. It looks like it's a 5.75. I'm sorry, it's not a dagger, it's a rigger.
Oh, it's a rigger.
A rigger.
Okay.
I do have a dagger also. The dagger is one
Yes.
for trees. Okay, it's a rigger. Sorry.
Yes, it's a rigger. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because some of you may have already left. You will get you should have all received the video from last week, unless you weren't in the class last week, in which case
No, I wasn't.
do it.
Yes.
I wasn't.
Yeah, you can buy it if you want for $25, if you want to do that. But, I think I put
So
it.
is that the procedure then? You sent us the video and now it's today?
If you've signed on
Yes.
to the class, then you just get the video. She'll usually clean it up and send it by around the same time as the next session. So you should have if you were in it last time, you would get, otherwise.
I wasn't.
Yeah, you
So,
know, I think in my blog, I put them there or something.
okay.
And then the other thing is, what am I doing next week? I got to check. I think I'm doing a still life. Hold on.
Life.
Calendar.
Hours.
Yes, next week I will do a still life, but it'll have to be from a photo so you can all see. And we'll do the same thing. The photo will go out to you at the same time as you get the link so that you have a better way of looking at it while I'm demoing.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Aline.
You
Hopefully
guys,
see you again
thank you.
soon.
Hear me? Stay safe.
Bye.
Thank you, and you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.